We continue then with some of your reaction. For more on this, so we're now joined by civil society's Rachel Bukasa, who is the executive director for Black Sash, and she joins us now via our video link. Rachel, thank you so much for your time this evening here in SABC News. Now, we expected to see that budget speech take place earlier on this afternoon. Of course, we now know that it has been postponed. What is your reaction as civil society?
So civil society, our reaction is, one, we are in full agreement with the refusal for the VAT increase. We think that was absolutely the correct decision that needed to be taken. We are, however, in disagreement with the 11th hour nature of the cancellation. The budget speech, and when it happens, is not a surprise. And I think your former guest just said it. I think the ANC has had a majority for such a long time that it just took it for granted that it will bulldoze its way through the budget speech like it normally does. It consults, but not meaningfully with people. It ticks the boxes and proceeds. And I think for the first time, they are realizing that meaningful consultation is needed rather than the text box exercises that they are used to.
And, you know, when it comes to that 2% VAT increase that we would have seen by now, it's quite clear that it would have really affected the poorest of the poor in this country.
It's unfathomable that you're prepared to put a 2% VAT increase in exchange for tax-free chicken livers, but you're not willing to look at things like sin tax or tax on luxury goods. You're not prepared to look at that, but you want to do that for the poorest of poor and the middle class. People are going to struggle very badly with that added 2% increase. And it just speaks to the Minister of Finance and government's inability to see the reality. The budget is not just numbers. It reflects on people's day-to-day lives. And while they, in their comfortable jobs, can absorb the 2%, the rest of the country cannot. And when we talk about, a lot of people on grants, yes, people are on grants because they don't have jobs. And so when you want to make the bare minimum they can afford more expensive through that, clearly you are disconnected from reality.
And, when it comes to the government of national unity, what is your thoughts? Now that we find ourselves here, where it seems as if, even in cabinet, some of these decisions being taken, it really needs more consultation because of the different parties which are represented in the government of national unity.
Absolutely. I think it's, when the top dog in primary school suddenly goes to high school and finds that there are bigger dogs. I think it's an important countermeasure for the South African public that the government of national unity works the way it's working, because for the longest time, what the ANC has wanted is what the ANC went with. It didn't matter how civil society consulted. It didn't matter how many submissions you made. It didn't matter what different recommendations you made. They would do it for the sake of doing it. And I think now the GNU requires a sharing, if you will, that the ANC is not quite used to. And I think this has taken them by surprise, that it could actually happen that it doesn't go forward. And I hope this is a lesson in playing nice with the others, because what happens is that while politicians are unable to get along, on the ground, it means that there's a lot of uncertainty around food security, around increasing levels of poverty, and around increasing levels of distrust for government. So the budget is not a mere formality for the people on the ground. They need to take it seriously. By they, I mean government needs to take it seriously the way the people on the ground are taking it seriously because of the impact it has on their day-to-day lives.
Earlier on, you touched on the fact that, you are quite unhappy with the fact that this was left to the final and last minute, really, just before we saw that budget being presented. Why do you think that, this route was even taken, that we literally had to wait until 2 o'clock this afternoon to see whether this budget would go ahead or not?
In my personal view, that speaks to the infighting, right? Even though the president is wanting to show this united front with all the other members, but actually that speaks to infighting, because had there been a united front, we all knew when the budget speech was. Surely you cannot tell me that the disagreements started today. And so it speaks to a deeper problem where politics are taking preference over the importance of people's lives, and showmanship comes to play. I think this is something that could have easily been resolved way before. I think they knew, or alternatively, they could have gone ahead, presented the budget, had people vote against it, as is the process, and then triggered the mechanisms that follow. There's a process for that. To do this really is a lot of political showmanship, which honestly, as people on the ground, we don't have time for.
And, going ahead, we now know that the budget will be presented next month by the finance minister, we hope. Do you think that we'll be seeing a much a more different budget that will address the concerns, particularly of the poor?
Well, that's definitely the hope. The hope is that this has been a lesson learned and that they'll take some serious feedback. Not just feedback that's coming from civil society or Black Sash, but it's feedback that is coming from across all sectors in the country. We're saying you have a fundamental problem here. And the fundamental problem is that you're not able to produce enough jobs to absorb people and grow the economy to the way you're seeing it. And until you can do that, you need a safe social security structure to look after people. And so we hope that they've learned a lesson from this and are willing to be more collaborative in the negotiations as it goes forward. Because if they don't, what is going to happen is that we cannot see an instance where the budget speech doesn't go forward on the 12th, because reputation-wise, I don't think there's any coming back from that.
All right, Rachel, thank you so much for your time and for your reaction there. That is Rachel Bukasa. She is the Executive Director for Black Sash, just giving us their reaction.